So, how's it going? The AI is up and running, boss. I trained it on everything I knew and I run all the tests. And it seems
So,
that's really
everything's
working.
set up?
Yeah, everything is set up.
You done everything that.
Yes, everything is
Okay.
done. Yeah, everything is ready
Yeah. So
for
I
the
talked
AI.
to the board, and you're fired.
What? Oh no! Yes, I mean the AI can do everything you can, and it's pretty much trained.
This is
so I
BS.
Think, we are all set up here.
I can't believe you're doing that with me.
No!
This is
I know.
unfair.
Wait a second. The board is calling me. Just wait a
What?
second.
The board is calling you.
Uh-huh.
What does it mean?
Uh-huh.
This is unfair.
Wait.
I can't
Wait.
believe it.
You did what? It is trained? My job? Wait. I'm fired? Oh no! Generative AI has been on the spotlight for a while now. It feels like AI is everywhere and everybody's talking about it. And recently, a lot of big studios got into controversies by using generative AI in some way or another. And today I'd like to talk about some of these uses, not only as someone who enjoys talking about this gaming industry, but also as someone who works in it. Many executives have came out and talked about the use of generative AI in games in general. We got Sven Vink from Larian Studios talking about the use of generative AI in his studio, and he had to come out and talk about it. He hadn't asked me anything about it. He had a couple of tweets, he had some remarks. So there was a lot of controversies around it, around his statements about the use of generative AI. Activision has been caught using generative AI for like images from loading screens, I think, for images to promotional events. We got the classic Santa Claus with 6 fingers, the zombie Santa Claus. So there's also that. I think Battlefield recently has been also been caught using this, and even Expedition 33 has been caught with the hands in the cookie jar, using generative AI for placeholder. They claim, right? Everybody says, oh, it's just a placeholder image. We forgot to delete that. That wasn't supposed to be on the final product. But they were using for generating some newspaper articles. I don't remember where, in a cutscene or in loading screens. I'll paste the articles here. But yeah, a lot of these games have been caught using AI. Arc Raiders using AI to fill in the gaps of voice actors, to do several commands in the game, you know, several communication like pinging for your friends and allies, pointing items in the map and other stuff like that. So with all of that in mind, it starts to be pretty clear that generative AI is getting like rooted inside the gaming industry. We got several of these executives talking about how we should expect that our games use generative AI, and that a lot of it is already being incorporated into the gaming development process. And I want to talk more about this subject. And you know what's crazier? Generative AI affects so much the perceived value that the public has of a product that it starts becoming like food. You know, you have some food that claims to be gluten-free or to be light on carbs, anything they high protein, so anything they want to use to sell that they are organic. And just like food, you will now have games that will claim that they don't use AI, they are AI free. And just like some food companies might lie about their products, so do some gaming companies, right? And that statement about expecting that most of the games will be using generative AI in some way or another is unfortunately true. But it is true to some extent, and I want to talk more about the nuances on that statement and how it's not just black and white and everybody's using, and what it means for the future of the gaming industry. Although first I want to make it clear that I am mostly a 3D animator. I rarely even programmed anything outside college, and my experience will be as a 3D animator, the experience I'm sharing, and I've also only worked on very small time indie developing studios, so obviously I won't have the perspective of a AAA, veteran. but I also think it's valid to have this conversation, right? Truth is, generative AI is rocking the market, and while some jobs still feel fairly safe, all of them are being reshaped after its introduction. While personally, generative AI hasn't helped me a single bit with 3D animation, believe me, generative AI sucks when you're asking for questions regarding Blender, or at least at the level that I ask. I don't know if it's actually helpful for a beginner, but I would not recommend it. There are some great YouTube channels that you can go and, get the steep learning curve that I doubt generative AI can help, at least for Blender. I did use generative AI though to help me with some programming tasks, like creating some small visual effects, things that are more personal to me rather than using on my professional space. But I do also use generative AI to actually help me with improving my spreadsheets. When we are dealing with animation, sometimes games easily go into hundreds and sometimes thousands of animations, and it's pretty easy to get lost on these animations, which animations belongs to which characters and which types of animations can be used where, and having information and data really easily accessible, it's super useful for me as an animator. And AI has helped me, close that gap of my knowledge of what I know and can do using spreadsheets. And I also do use generative AI sometimes to generate the tags of my videos and sometimes even parts of the description. So yeah, to a lot of extent, I have been using generative AI to help me in some parts of my life, but it's not like that huge replacement of anything. It's more like trying to replace the menial tasks, or like in the spreadsheet case, I'm trying to quickly jump a lack of knowledge, a gap of knowledge that I need to use, especially focused in my case for easily accessing these thousands of animations in my spreadsheets. And that's the thing, sometimes AI improves your work time. It might be minimal, like avoiding you spend 10 hours a year on improving your Google Sheets, but those small increments are being adopted industry-wide by all workers. I know programmers that use generative AI to help with some console errors. Others might use it to kickstart an initial idea for their script. And some might even not copy it, but just use it as a syntax assistant, while others might just be copying and pasting AI responses into their games. Some sound artists might be just using generative AI to assist them composing on the right tunes so they aren't out of proper scale, while others might be downright composing whole beats and tracks using generative AI. Look, at the end of the day, we are tech workers and we should stay on with the technology. We should definitely use generative AI and understand where its application is beneficial to everybody, both the people who are working, the customers who are getting the product, but the use of generative AI should be transparent and disclosed by everybody. There is a lot of different ways developers can use generative AI to either help their work or fully output a whole part of the game through generative AI. Some of my examples were past experience, some of it were allegorical or created to convey what I have heard from other colleagues, and others were talking on the internet. Regardless, I believe in transparency on the use of AI when developing games. Did developers use the AI just to help with the brainstorm phase, with the concept art, mood boards, or other forms of conceptualization of ideas? I think it should be disclosed. Did the developers use the AI to fill in voice gaps that they couldn't fill due to budget, greed, time constraints, or any other reasons? I think it should be disclosed. Are you using AI for final images, textures, models, or whatever you want to do in your game? There is no reason not to disclose it. Well, there actually is one reason. Money. The perceived value of a product when part of the work used to create it was generated through AI goes down proportionally to how much generative AI has been used. A lot of people had the chance to use generative AI to this point, so a lot of them have this perceived idea that if you are using generative AI, you are, saving a lot of work because of how easy, how accessible it is, and how easy it is to at least have any result. but the public sees a product with less value the more generative AI has been used to make that product, and also how easy it is to perceive that generative AI was used. And when companies like Battlefield and Call of Duty come out of the blue, using generative AI on their high budget games, customers feel swindled. Swindled by years of arguments from these gaming companies that gaming development is getting more and more expensive, with games using more and more advanced tech, hence why they need to monetize everything. From deluxe editions to day one DLCs, loot boxes, season passes, selling blood on a war game, exclusivity deals, whatever you wanna name it. And companies know that being honest about the use of generative AI on their work would degrade the value of their products. And this is why we are unfortunately still at an age where gaming developers will feel prompted to lie, to say no generative AI was used in their products, as they know the perceived value will be lower. And yeah, Arc Raiders was caught using generative AI to create some voice lines for some of the characters. From what I could gather, they had some voice actors come in, do the recordings, and they obviously signed papers where they agreed that their voice could be used to generate lines in the future. So they did a lot of work, for the main lines that the characters need to say. And after that, since this is a multiplayer game, there's a lot of pinging, you point to an item and you say ammo here, or maybe enemy there, north, west, maybe we're talking about directions. I don't explicitly know how this was used, but these feelings, of voices used for this type of communications, some of them, I don't know how much, were created after these workers were hired and were created through the use of generative AI. Obviously, this saves the studio money, but then comes the ethical question, right? Shouldn't they just hire the guys once again to record a few more lines, even though that would probably waste more money? Because if I recall correctly, they are a pretty big studio. They lined up with a pretty big publisher. I might be wrong. I might correct myself here while I'm editing, but this poses up all of these important questions of this ethical use of generative AI. There is the fact that the workers signed and agreed to have their voices used like that, but is that really an option? Because I don't think there was an option to work and not sign that agreement, right? Probably you either sign the agreement or they would hire someone else, right? But there's also other arguments like, well, maybe they would not hire these guys back again and they would not have these voice feelings, and we as players would get a product with less content in the end, and the result for the voice actors would still be the same. So there's a lot of nuance on that, and it depends on who are you asking, depends on how you believe, how cynical you are approaching this, and how much do you believe things would be different. So still, if you also think, oh, okay, the customer is now getting a better product, but a better product also means more value, so they are getting more value out and still not paying the other dudes. There's a lot of questions, a lot of nuance. It's not black and white, but there's a lot of stances that the public takes regarding those. Critics, players, they are taking a lot of stances, influencers, so everybody has their strong opinions or trying to sit on the fence about it. There was even a case, I don't remember if it was Eurogamer or what outlet actually gave a lower score review to Arc Raiders, and while Arc Raiders were getting these high reviews, they gave a lower score review because they used generative AI in their game. But I think the same guy also gave a high grade to Call of Duty, which also used generative AI like last year and is using this year. And there's also Expedition 33, which was also caught using AI. So best game of the year. A lot of people love it, but it's also using AI. So there is a lot, of questions of when it's acceptable. If compared, like, everybody hates when Activision used the generative AI the way they did, right? It was just an image that anybody can just prompt it, so it felt like it was cheap. But what Arc Raiders did actually required a little bit of work, so people feel a little bit more value, and also because of the nuances of the results, the things that I said also made people see more value in what Arc Raiders did rather than what Activision or Battlefield are doing or other games do with this generative AI placeholder images. At least they feel like placeholder, and they always use this excuse when they get caught. And look, guys, don't get me wrong, if it looks like I'm advocating for the use of generative AI because it would make the life of us developers easy, this is not what I'm saying. I'm raising the question of when this is acceptable. I'm also raising the point that I think there should be transparency regarding the use of generative AI in the development of your game, and that there are also different levels of use of generative AI, both inside the development of the game and also outside in the learning process of different developers. But wait, does that mean that all games are expected to use generative AI? Well, not at all, but I want to propose a few examples to you guys of how generative AI can be adjacent to the gaming development or even a complete part of it, and then we can try and have a more clear picture of what Sven Vink was saying and other executives say when they talk about the whole industry is already adopting the use of generative AI. The first thing that I want to talk about is that games can still fairly easily be done without generative AI. We've done it for a long time and it's still very possible. And as I said, might even increase your product value if that can be proved. The second thing I want to talk about is that there are other forms of generative or recycling of work that has been used in the industry by AAAs and indies alike. That is not an excuse, but the idea of trying to save up work with automated creation is something industries have been engaging for a long time. Just like using assets. Most customers dislike asset flips because of the same reason. They devalue the product because they clearly show something was done as quickly as possible and a fair lot of people could replicate it. But when people use assets for an initial ground and then upon it they improve, that is sometimes accepted by the public pretty well, depending on how the devs did it, both on closed and public versions of the game, and how open the devs were about the use of such assets. And the reality is that some developers could be using generative AI for initial ideas and then iterate upon it, be it on code, art, visual effects, sound effects, or whatever else they can do it. And the third thing I want to talk about is that if some developer uses generative AI to help improving their knowledge over a subject that was later used into creating a game, does that count as AI? I think you wouldn't count that as AI, but even if you did, the reality is that many developers are actually using generative AI to speed up learning some very specific knowledge that they need for situational problems, and not trying to, go into a full course about a more broad subject, or even, a class or anything that they can go to learn that. There is a lot of adjacent uses of generative AI that could be affecting gaming development in one way or another. It could be for the menial tasks, it could be for the creation of data, conceptualization, and even like you might say, oh, this is an ethical use of generative AI, but then you remember about concept artists and even people who do translation work, and you feel like some of these jobs might be threatened by the use of generative AI. There is a lot of questions, and this is why this is a very hot topic, controversial. There is a lot of nuance, and it needs to be carefully approached because it's a very dangerous technology. And I think these examples of how generative AI can be adjacent to the gaming development, not just blatantly using it to create a final product, I think this paints a more clear picture on what Sven was saying and what other executives say about how the whole gaming industry is kinda using generative AI as a whole to generate and to develop the games moving forward. There is a lot of value in work done by humans, and everybody still values that. And that's why a lot of companies will lie through their teeth to the extent of generative AI being used. And we should advocate for transparency so we can understand the proper value of what's being sold to us. And as I was saying, both as a dev and as a customer, I love human work. And it's weird to say it like that. And while I believe there is some ethical applications of generative AI that can only add to what otherwise wouldn't be there, I also believe the indiscriminate use of it without any thought or trying to use to replace human work will always output a crappy result and will degrade your product. But only time will tell if we will stabilize and apply generative AI as any other technology used in media creation, or if companies will continue down the unsustainable path of trying to replace most work with AI outputs while also asking more and more for the worst minimum viable products. And that's it, my guys. I want to know your opinion about this subject. This is a very hot topic, a very touchy subject. I want to know your opinion about developers using generative AI to create games moving forward. About the transparency, do you feel like they are being clear, or do you feel like they are being shady and hiding how they are using generative AI in all of their games? Do you think there should be a law to disclose that? What do you think about Steam asking the developers to disclose the use of generative AI in the process of developing their games? How much do you think that they use should be disclosed, as the examples that I put? Like, if someone uses AI to learn some skills, should that be disclosed? If someone uses AI to help with the Google Sheets they use in their games, should that be disclosed? I want to know the extent of things you think should be disclosed when using generative AI. I want to know your opinion. I want to know you guys' opinions on everything I talked about in this video. And I will see you on the next one. If you are new here, please subscribe, leave a like. If you didn't like the video, dislike it. And ring the bell for more notifications on more videos. And I'll see you guys on the next one. Thank you very much and bye-bye.